best business lesson is a really obvious one, which is get the smartest, most efficient hackers and hustlers around you. You need to get to where you want to go as fast as you can possibly do that, and that will take testing, learning, and experimenting. And so the biggest learning for me is if you can get those people around you earlier, sooner, rather than later, you tend to move a bit quicker. You tend to know more today than you would otherwise, and you don't want to wait until tomorrow.
What is up, action takers? Welcome back to the After Hours Entrepreneur, where we are helping you get to your first six-figure year. Woo! I'm excited today. I hope you are. We are joined by Blake Hutchison, who is the CEO of Flippa, an online marketplace to buy and sell online businesses. So today, we're actually not necessarily talking about how to build up to your first six-figure business, but we're talking about how to build that business so that there's actually an exit at the end. We're going to be talking about key things that you need to consider with building your business. Things like systems, standard operating procedures, cash flow, lots of really good stuff, some good laughs too. You stay tuned, because when you hear some of the more shocking businesses that have been sold, you're going to laugh, you're going to cry. Super cool, super fun episode. And I think something that's really important, I learned a lot, and I hope that you do as well, so that you can build a business that you love and can sell when the time is right. All right, let's get into this episode. Thanks for listening and subscribing. Blake Hutchison, let's go. DJ, run the tape. Yo, Blake, what's up?
Hey, Mark, how are you? Good to be here.
Bro, good. I'm glad to be here too. We've actually got a hurricane hitting South Florida this week, so I'm feeling good. I'm happy. I'm safe, and I'm ready to just bring on Hurricane Blake into the house to talk business today. So it's gonna be fun.
Well, I will try to be a hurricane for you. I'll impress. I'm certainly not dressed to impress, but I'll impress as much as I can.
Hey, well, it's the new breed of entrepreneur. It's the new breed of business, right? We don't need to be wearing, something to impress everyone. Just whatever's comfortable, what looks good, what's clean. I'm about it. I'm about that life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I wear a t-shirt 365 days a year, so that's the way to go.
I like it. Side note, when I left my professional corporate job, I committed to wearing flip-flops every day to everywhere I went. I didn't fulfill that completely. I'm not a flip-flops all the time type of guy, but I'm working on it.
So, Mark, as you can probably hear, I've got a very thick Aussie accent, right? And I'm a bit better these days, but there's certainly been years where I would say 9 months of the year I've been in flip-flops.
Nice. Yeah, I wish I could give you a digital high five, and a digital high five to all you flip-flop wearers out there. We got your back. So, Blake, I want to talk a little bit about your entry story, right? You're the CEO of Flippa. But you've been involved in a lot of different businesses, and the good, bad, and the ugly. I want to start with what was the best business lesson that you learned as you were opening and running different businesses? What's your best business lesson?
Yeah, I mean, the best business lesson is a really obvious one, which is get the smartest, most efficient hackers and hustlers around you. And often we talk about how smart someone is. But actually what is important is that you combine those smarts with someone who has the hacker and hustler mentality, because you need to get to where you want to go as fast as you can possibly do that. And that will take testing, learning, and experimenting. And so the biggest learning for me is if you can get those people around you earlier, sooner, rather than later, you tend to move a bit quicker. You tend to know more today than you would otherwise. And you don't want to wait until tomorrow.
Was there ever a time that you were working with someone, or you're watching someone, you're like, I don't know that they're going anywhere, but they had that grit, they had the determination? Is there anyone that stands out in your mind like, wow, they just really surpassed your greatest expectation?
Oh, there's heaps of those. They're the best. They're my Blake's fan favorites. Yes, I mean, I've got people who came from certain jobs that were not related to business development or sales and proved themselves to be better salespeople than those who had done it for years. And that often came down to just having a process and a workflow they worked through to, understand who was a good prospect, work that prospect super hard, super diligently, was always timely in their communication, and then all of a sudden they end up with the biggest commission checks, and the salespeople are saying, "Well, how did that happen?" So, I think that's a key learning for me, actually, because you can get people from different disciplines, different walks of life, and they will tend to surprise you if you give them a shot and work to their strengths versus their weaknesses, which some people focus a bit much on. We've had some really, really great stories even here at Flippa. There was a gentleman who moved to Australia, has a degree in data science and machine learning, but was an immigrant to Australia, couldn't get a work visa, no one would give him a start. And so was working in petrol stations, and one of our board members ran into him, got to know his story, said, "You should meet Blake, he'll probably give you a shot." And so I went and had a coffee with the guy the next day, and he still works with me now. So I've got so many great stories of people who show a bit of grit, a bit of hustle, a bit of determination, because smart is kind of expected these days, right? Like, if you come to work at a great company that's growing fast, you're probably smart. The differentiator is not actually whether you're smart, it's whether you've got a bit of intellectual curiosity about you, and then whether you've got the determination, the grit, the hard work to actually do the stuff that matters on any given day.
What about routine? How important do you think routine is to success?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was telling someone earlier today, I was like, well, you've got the people around and you want more people around you, but how about you get the processes in order first, right? So let's make these people super successful by giving them really, really clear checklists to follow, really, really clear workflows, a standard operating procedure where they can come to work and feel like if they get that day's work done, it's been worth something because they can track it. It's there for everyone to see. And when people don't actually have that, they feel a little lost. And so I guess this is a really long way of saying, that was a long answer to your question, which in short is, the more routine someone has, at least in the beginning of their tenure, not necessarily forever, but in the beginning of their tenure, the more critical, because people want to impress in the first 3 months. So you've got to actually set them up to do that. And the best way to do that is to give them really, really rigorous objectives to work to, and then a process they can follow to achieve, and then reward them accordingly, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, what we're talking about here is standard operating procedures, right? Giving people and laying out the systems. As a young entrepreneur, I find that I'm always tweaking my systems. It's like, as soon as I think I've got it all figured out, I move up to the next level of scale, and oops, I got to reformat that. I've got a new offer. I've got a new team member. Things are scaling up. And so that's something that I think about a lot. I've been reading Atomic Habits by James Cleary. Great book. So good. And I was captivated just kind of reading and doing some research about you, Blake, and you're an early morning riser. You wake up early, right?
Yeah, I kind of go to bed late and I wake up early, which is not necessarily a wonderful habit, is it? But yeah, no, you're right.
So how important do you think for you waking up early is?
Okay, let's dig into why I wake up early. I wake up early for two reasons. One, my daughter might be awake, in which case I've got to wake up early. And the second reason is that I'm operating. So, hey, everyone, I'm operating from Australia, and it's the worst time zone to run a global tech company. It sucks. And we have the vast majority of our customer base and our sales and marketing workforce operating out of the US and Europe. And so I'm waking up early because I want to know what has happened in their business day so I can assist. And so it's important for me to figure out whether the last 12 hours of activity that may have happened over in the US is something I need to know about so that I can process that and help the organization facilitate whatever the problems, challenges, and opportunities are. And so for me, it's about processing my day early enough to be able to make informed decisions. And if I get there too late, time is a really, really problematic factor in scale-up land.
It's funny, and I wasn't expecting to go this way. I love these discussions. You never know where they're going to lead you, right? But I've found that, I've got a lot of team members that are working all over the world, most actually zero in the United States. And as I bring on more clients for production, as I bring on more clients for consulting, and we're doing all this work, like I have to do quality control, and I have to make sure that we hit deadlines with clients. And, I find that my hours are maybe not optimal for me. but I need to make sure that my team is able to execute too.
Yeah, that's a really important point, right? Because my team often says, and my wife often says, please look after yourself, right? Don't work as long as you do. But interestingly enough, the point you just made is a really important one. So I kind of feel like I can get myself through. I can take care of myself, but my job is actually to make sure that the company and our staff are well set up to ensure that, one, they love working at Flippa, but two, the problems and opportunities that they uncover can be resolved and or set upon really, really quickly. And so I'm a little bit similar in your mindset, which is, it doesn't need to be that comfortable for me, but let's make it really comfortable for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like, as a leader, they don't work for you. You work for them, right? You work for your team.
Yeah. Every day. It's like, hey, so you've got this challenge, you've got this deadline. I agree it's hard. So just give me some stuff and I'll help you achieve it.
How many team members do you have at Flippa?
We're still pretty small. So 65.
Okay. 65. And so when you're onboarding people, this is something I've been thinking about a lot too. And I think that all the after hours entrepreneurs need to be thinking about this. As you scale up and you bring on new team members, when you go to actually train them, what do your training systems look like? Do you have video training modules? Do you have it pre-planned? Okay, for this position, this is what you're going to go through, because eventually you're going to have churn and you're going to lose employees. You're going to need to bring new ones on. How do you make that smooth?
Yeah, so we don't, unfortunately. Let's be super candid here today. I don't reckon our training systems are any good at all. But we've recognized that. And in fact, you talk about waking up early, going to bed late. Last night at midnight here in Australia, I was delivering some training to all of our new staff members around why Flippa, what is the value proposition, why should people choose us. And that has now obviously been recorded. It's been stored on our intranet. It's got not only the recording, but there's a transcript. And now we'll write up a follow-up memo to that training so that people can read the memo and get sort of a bit more color around the subject matter. And I reckon that's a really good way, right? That you use someone in the organization who knows a lot or the most about a particular topic, you deliver it to the active workforce, and then you store it away and make sure it's available in an onboarding document or process so that people can get benefit out of the work that other people put in before their time. So that's the beginnings of us getting better at training. But yeah, I mean, I accept the importance of it, and I don't think we've been that good at it until very recently.
Well, listen, we're always getting better. I really like what you said there about having this kind of like common mission or this common statement that everyone can get behind, all the team members from the bottom to the top, from the janitor to the CEO, right? And that reminds me of something that I read in Donald Miller's book, How to Build a Story Brand. He really hits on that. You need to have a really clear, strong one-liner, a really strong message about what you do and why you do it.
Yep.
How many times do I speak with a young entrepreneur and I say, hey, well, what do you do? And it's like, well, it's funny you ask. And they enter into a 5-minute monologue about what they do. And I'm like, whoa, that ain't going to work.
Yeah.
And I think, at least from a sales standpoint, if everyone buys into that mission, into that vision, I think it really helps to steer the business in the right direction. And I think that's something that we all need to be thinking about doing ASAP.
Yeah, that's right. And so for us, right, we're the number one marketplace to buy and sell online businesses. So people kind of get it when you explain it to them that way. One, it's a marketplace, therefore it's two-sided. Secondly, there's buyers who want to acquire these businesses. There's sellers who want to sell their businesses. And we do online businesses only. So it's relatively niched in that regard. But the way we talk about it with our staff relates to the actual business owner themselves, right? And so we try to educate our staff about the importance of that business owner's journey, because Flippa is at the end of the journey. So you've got to respect where they've come from. And so we talk about online business owners being the lifeblood of the digital economy. We talk about the fact that they make and sell beautiful, creative, smart, and intelligent sites, stores, and apps. But they've come to you because they want to sell their business. So you need to not only understand them, their business, and their motivations, but you also have to help them understand how they're going to get the job done with Flippa.
Yeah, selling your baby.
So that,
right?
yeah, it's an amazing thing, right? There's so much emotion caught up in this process, and we have to have empathy for that.
Yeah, well said. Well said. What are the most popular businesses? What are the best businesses to build for an exit? Not to say that all of us after hours entrepreneur are just trying to sell out real quick, right? That's maybe not the case, but it would be nice to build something that we can sell. So what are the most popular businesses to sell?
Yeah, so the most popular by number of units would be e-commerce businesses. And I think that's just because despite the fact that we're somewhat going through a downturn, the reality is over the last decade, e-commerce as a function of people's shopping habits is very substantial and will continue to be that way. So e-commerce is number one. It tends to be the buyers are investors, so they're looking to generate cash flow and buy something which they believe to be an appreciating asset. Content businesses are really good in that regard because it tends to be that they're more passive from a revenue earning context, which means that so long as you've got your established writer base producing that content and or a evergreen content repository, the revenue keeps on flowing through. And so most entrepreneurs really appreciate and I wouldn't say anything is truly passive, by the way, and that would be a mistake to do so. But those types of businesses are more passive than most, so therefore they're quite attractive on the platform. As it relates to multiples and therefore attractiveness by way of earnings for effort, if you want to put it that way, you get the best multiples on SaaS businesses. For obvious reasons, it's a recurring customer base, but that is purely dependent on churn rates, customer retention rates, and lifetime value. So sometimes we get a SaaS business owner who comes to us and says, hey, SaaS multiples are X. That's what I want. That's what I'm going to get. And we say, well, hang on, you got a churn of 22%. So you're just not going to get that same level of multiple. But generally speaking, a SaaS business will pay you back on your effort a bit better than a low margin e-com business. And interestingly enough, right now, if there's any app owners listening out there, there's huge amounts of demand for apps. So about 12 months ago, there was huge excitement around the aggregator industry, right? So every Tom, Dick and Harry had raised $10 to $50 million to buy up Amazon businesses. And that industry still exists today, but it's going through some heartache as those businesses come to terms with the fact that they're actually not aggregators, they're operators. So they've got to learn how to operate. But there is a similar movement around people who have amassed war chests to acquire apps. So we're talking about apps that are gaming apps, could be SaaS-based apps where you subscribe for usage, could be in-app purchasing. But we're talking about iOS and Android, the ecosystem there. And what sort of people get super interested by is, do you know that Apple makes... The Apple ecosystem, not Apple, the Apple ecosystem is making about $100 billion a year, right? So for all the apps that are sitting on that ecosystem, it is highly lucrative to be a part of. And so a bunch of investors around the world have realized that that's an asset type and an asset class you might want to be interested in.
Well, that makes sense, especially as we're going through this pretty volatile economic time. I think a lot of people are sitting on cash. We don't really know where to put it. Is it real estate? Is it stocks and bonds? Is it crypto? We don't know where to put it. But in times like this, one of the keys is cash flow, right? So buying into something that can generate cash flow, e-commerce, content. And when you say content business, I'm thinking blogs, right? Because I want to kind of talk about this in a moment, like selling podcasts, selling YouTube channels, because we're moving into the creator economy now. Right? So there's tons of people making content and getting paid really well for that content. Is that something that's sellable? How can we sell ourselves?
Yes. So there are some dependencies here, but yes, it's sellable. So what are you buying? You're buying the audience, you're buying the client base. And when I say client base, if you've got sponsors, if you've got advertisers, that client base, so long as they've had a good experience with your product and it's generally assisted them with the acquisition of new customers, they will tend to stay on board, or at least there'll be a prospect list from which you can farm. So that's got some value. The archive of content has some value because you get listenership that goes back through that archive, and to some extent it therefore becomes a repeat user. You almost get flywheel. So if you've got 1,000 episodes of a podcast, acquiring that podcast and investing in that podcast is far easier than it is to produce your first 1,000 episodes.
Sure. Sure.
And so, yes, there is value.
Interesting. I had Roberto Blake on the other day, and we were talking about the creator economy and how it's just exploding. I mean, heck, the White House is bringing in TikTokers to, influence consumer behavior. So the consumer, I mean, this thing is happening. The creator economy is happening. It's something I think about a lot because there's only one Mark. I am non-fungible. Hate to say it. I'm non-fungible. There is only one me. And so I've often thought about how that might be, where that exit might be. So it's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make. I'm curious, Blake, what was the most surprising business that sold on Flippa?
Yeah, that's a really great question. You know what? There are some silly businesses that sell, but I wouldn't necessarily say surprising. It often is really simple in that it comes down to cash flow and earnings. I am still trying to answer your question, by the way. I'm thinking about a silly business. Way back when, before my time, believe it or not, the website where you could buy glitter bombs, so you'd buy literally an envelope full of glitter and you'd send it to an enemy. I can't believe I'm even talking about this or being transparent about it. Anyway, that business sold on Flippa for, I don't know, like $100,000 or something. And for the past 2 years, that business had been churning out glitter bombs and, making a bit of money, and someone else wanted a turn, so they bought it. So that's pretty silly. But most of the time, you know what? It doesn't actually matter the topic. It certainly matters the business model because buyers tend to orientate to business model. But it doesn't necessarily matter the topic. What matters is the business consistently well-performing? And if it's consistently well-performing, and I don't mean hypergrowth, right? We don't sell hypergrowth startups here at Flippa. That's not what we're doing. We're helping genuinely good quality business owners exit with cash flow generating assets. And so as long as it's got an objective, a good quality objective line, and when I say objective, I'm just talking about financial and operational metrics, then it will sell.
Got it. Glitter bombs. Gosh, that's a good business. It's getting me, I can see all those after hours entrepreneurs out there. The brains are churning. Glitter bomb. Wow, my worst enemy.
Actually, I wouldn't mind being sent one. Like legitimately, if someone knocked on the door and I opened this envelope up and just glitter went everywhere, it's probably going to be kind of fun.
You better be careful what you wish for on that one.
That's a good point.
Especially if you pop it open at home with the wife and the kids. Like, poof, oh no. Listen, is a kid
not gonna be...
is a father of 2 young kids. Glitter is like my arch nemesis. Glitter and Legos. Like, please no.
Yeah, glitter's worse, but my arch nemesis is Play-Doh. Do you know what Play-Doh? Play-Doh.
Oh, I know.
Right? It's like, yeah, Play-Doh.
Yes. Don't get it wet. Rule 1: don't get it wet. Don't get it wet. I'm another thing that I'm interested in, Blake, as you're growing out your business over there at Flippa, is you're hitting the podcast game hard. I could see you just, as I was doing my research, which I research every guest here to make sure we get the most value out of it. There is a lot of Blake Hutchison out on the market. Why is going on podcasts such an important part of your business strategy and your daily life?
So for me, it's a constant feedback loop. And so what happened was when I first took the job, there were a bunch of people who said, hey, do you want to jump on our podcast and tell us about the journey and what Flippa's up to and what you're trying to build? I said, yeah, sure, that sounds good. And then inevitably, we started hearing from business owners and or buyers that, they'd heard about Flippa on a podcast. So it's a simple game of math. If I can sort of do a podcast a month and, find a pathway to meet wonderful people like you who are willing to have an engaged chat, then inevitably someone says, wow, that's actually reasonably interesting, that business that Blake's talking about, i.e. Flippa, and maybe I want to check it out, just maybe. And so when someone registers on Flippa, we ask them, where'd you find out? It's a really basic form. We've obviously got other attribution means. But initially when they register, it just says, where'd you find out? Google, Facebook, podcast, email, whatever. And we, I can't actually remember what the number is, so I won't say, but it was certainly a good enough percentage of new registered users were stating that podcast is where they had heard of us, and hopefully that answers the question. You just keep doing them as a result. It becomes part of your media strategy.
Well, yeah, listen, if you're not asking your traffic where they're coming from, you're making a mistake, ladies and gentlemen. We gotta find out where our traffic comes from. Super important. And I love it. I think that I feel like I kind of hit the lottery in getting into podcasting because it's just completely exploding right now. The day of the television and the radio are kind of like waning away is the day of the podcast, the YouTuber, the digital media. It's really flipping on its head, or flippa-ing on its head. No pun intended.
That's now, do you publish your podcast to YouTube because you think that, well, firstly, do you publish your podcast to YouTube?
Oh, yeah.
So do you publish to YouTube because, YouTube's not historically known as a podcast channel, right? But clearly it is. That's what people now do. They publish there. But do you publish there to increase your distribution, or is it actually a very sizable part of the listenership?
It's definitely part of. So it's a little bit of both. One of the things I love about YouTube is that it's searchable forever. Podcasts can kind of get pushed under the radar a little bit once they become very old. Not to say that people don't listen to, episode 1, 2, and 3. That still happens. But YouTube is just, it's the second largest search engine on the internet. Like, people go there, people search. It's completely free, right? So I can upload a video there and it's there forever. Like, people are going to be watching me and Blake talking about this in like 10 years, and I think there's a lot of value there, both to listeners, my audience, great for feedback. And then it's great for guests too, because now you know that you're front and center for long periods of time, SEO, backlinks. I think there's a lot of benefits there,
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Plus, when I go to sell this on Flippa in 5 years, I've got the YouTube asset to go along with all the other RSS feeds too, which is pretty cool.
Well, so just to be clear, that's a really important point. You're actually you're building a media company, and so if it's a standalone podcast, just distribute on maybe Spotify and Apple or whatever else. You've missed an opportunity to diversify your listenership. You've missed an opportunity to potentially diversify your revenue streams. And so, just so everyone knows, if you are ever looking to sell your business, buyers absolutely love diversification, right? Buyers love seeing a business which is generating its customer base from multiple sources as much as they do see it generating revenue from multiple sources. So you can sell a podcast on Flippa, but what's interesting is if you sell a podcast on Flippa, we will always ask you, as part of merchandising your listing and ensuring it finds its way to the right buyers, what other channels you use to distribute as well as earn. So that's a really critical message for your audience.
What role does your company play in helping to facilitate the sale, right? So, for example, if I go on eBay and I'm selling, my daughter's doll because she was bad that day, I just post it and I forget about it. Someone buys it and I ship it out, right? How involved is Flippa in the consulting? Because I don't know anything about selling a giant business, right? How hands-on is Flippa?
So the short answer is very substantial. The longer answer is that it depends on the price of the asset.
Okay.
So if you're posting the equivalent of your daughter's doll on Flippa, which would be, a starter website that might be valued at a couple of $100, maybe up to a couple of $1,000, depending on its capabilities, its design, and maybe some initial content development, etc. We're not going to have much involvement. We've got a platform which will match buyers programmatically. We've got integrated PayPal, escrow. We've got letters of intent. We've got contracts of sale, and it's all there. Now, of course, you can ask us a question anytime. There's 24/7 support. Most of the time, it's same-day support. So you can ask us a question and get help, etc. Now, what we will do is we'll use the marketplace to verify, right? So we will ask for ID verification before we let you transact. We will ask for traffic validation by way of connecting you to Google Analytics. We'll ask for LinkedIn account verification so we can make sure that you are who you say you are from an account standpoint. And that's before you list versus before you buy. It's ID verification. So the marketplace does stuff, and therefore we would say we take a very active role. But as it relates to a hands-on role, you're absolutely right. You can't sell a $100,000 asset, $1 million asset, a $10 million asset. A couple of weeks ago, a $35 million asset on the Flippa platform without having fantastic advisory. Yeah. So we have a full advisory team, as well as we do third-party brokers and M&A advisors waiting in the wings in the event that someone would prefer to use our platform for our access to buyers, but get matched to someone who has a designated skill set. So the short answer is lots and lots of hands-on human level support for high value, and lots of platform level support for lower value.
Good deal. Good deal. I mean, and I think it seems certainly very, very important. What was the largest sell? What was the largest company to sell on Flippa?
40 mil.
40 million. What was that business, if you don't mind me asking?
So that was an app portfolio.
Oh, okay. Okay, app portfolio.
Yeah. So you guys have got an app publisher, right? They make apps. That's all they do. Mm-hmm. And they had, therefore, I can't remember, but it was like 10 or 20 different apps, and clearly some were better performing than others. But what they didn't want to do was just sell the better performing. What they said was, we're a publisher. We're selling our entire ecosystem of apps. Some are fast growing, some are less fast growing, some are brand new. But that business was churning out around $600,000 net profit a month. Okay. So when you talk about cash flow generating, and you're talking about getting a good deal as a buyer, that's actually a pretty good deal, right? You got a business that's doing in excess of 10 mil. So that's really good.
Yeah, I'll say. I mean, cash flow and earnings, like you said. As we start, I know everybody online tells the truth all the time. We're all very honest people. We're great. Scouts honor. Have you ever run into any scam businesses, people trying to scam buyers on Flippa?
So you do get it at the very low value. You never get it at the high value because the checks and balances are too great. So we have a full verification team for any asset valued over $50,000. And we have a very, very high level of verification for all assets valued over $5,000. Now, at the low end of the marketplace, and remember, we are a marketplace, so we're price agnostic. You can list on our business for $1,000. You can list on our business for $50 million. It's a marketplace. It's like Airbnb. You can rent a castle in Scotland, or say in some not very great place in, I won't mention a name. So you could, in theory, have a situation. It's actually extraordinarily rare. We haven't had a case in about 18 months. But you could, in theory, put up a domain and state that domain had some earnings. Maybe it's making $25 a month. And you could then try and sell that for, 3 or 4 times earnings.
Yeah.
And it turns out that what you did was put 2 orders in a month under your own name.
Right.
So that's why Flippa's built what we call verification at the source, right? And so if they try to do that with Shopify, but they're not connected, they can't list on the platform anymore. And so you actually, if you are a Shopify merchant, we recognize that. We can see that because we connect to multiple sources to establish that. And then we will ask you to connect to Shopify and pull down your data to prove. And Flippa will programmatically review the order data to ensure that it's legitimate. So historically, there were examples of that happening, but more and more so that's not happening anymore. And in fact, on October, in mid to late October, we're launching another 9 integrations.
Wow.
So at the moment, we have things like Shopify, WooCommerce, we have Google Analytics, we have QuickBooks Online, and we'll launch another 9, which means that, and our goal, by the way, is to have like 100 different integrations, so that the question you asked, which is a factor and a problem with all marketplaces actually, that you've got to mitigate against over time, becomes less and less of a problem.
Are y'all watching the NFT, metaverse, blockchain market at all? Is that something that you're looking at? Is that like the next wave of unique businesses that are going to be going on sale?
That's a really great question. I don't think we've thought enough about it to be able to answer that. Clearly, it's a very substantial opportunity, and clearly, we got 3 million registered accounts. We get another 30,000 a month. Clearly, if they're thinking about online business sale or acquisition, they're probably well aware of the NFT Web3 space.
Yeah.
So could we move into that space and get instant bang for buck? Probably, but you've got to do something unique. And, OpenSea and others kind of dominate that space right now. So unless we're going to do something unique, we wouldn't do it at all. And, there's 3 ways to grow a marketplace. We're a marketplace business in new markets, new products, new customers. Okay. So as a new product, could we launch an NFT marketplace? Probably. Have we thought about it and talked about it? Yes. I don't think it's a next 12-month thing.
That's fair. I'm really fascinated with the next wave of business, creator economy, different ways that people are generating money. And I see, I don't know. I don't know what's there. And I know my audience is like, Mark, you're talking about NFTs again. Sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, but I think it's important to.
So we would more say creator economy and platform economy as central to Flippa. And so what that means is we would more likely support revenue generating assets that have come off the back of Substack newsletters.
Yeah.
YouTube channels. If you could do it legitimately, Instagram accounts. Perhaps things like, Salesforce plugins, anything that is considered to be part of the platform economy and the ecosystem that surrounds that, helping other small businesses thrive or helping customers benefit from shopping from or utilizing small businesses would tend to be more Flippa's domain, at least at the moment.
Dig it. Well, I appreciate you coming on here, Blake, and kind of giving us some ideas, giving all these young entrepreneurs some ideas on what to look for, what to build, because the last thing we want to do is build our own prisons. We want to build freedom machines, baby. That's what we're here to do. And listen, Blake just gave you the goods. Blake just told you what you need to do. So now it's up to you to go take the action. Blake, I got to get into the rapid fire here with you. So get ready, buckle up. Whatever you got to do, tie your shoes. We're going to get into the rapid fire. But where's the best place for us to find you, Blake?
Get me on LinkedIn. It's my favorite platform still, channel, whether people agree with that or not. So just look me up, Blake Hutchison, Hutchison. Don't put in a middle N there. You'll find me there. I communicate regularly there. You can get me on Twitter. I'm at Blake now, but I must admit I'm probably not as big into Twitter as some people are.
Dig it. Well, guess what? I got a special treat for everyone out there. I'm going to put a link below to make it super easy for you. So click the link. Go connect with Blake on LinkedIn. Cool. Blake, you ready for the rapid fire here?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's go. Ba-ba-da-bum. Start your engines. Blake, what's the scariest movie you've ever seen?
Oh, God, what a question. I reckon that you just can't go past The Shining.
Ooh. Yeah. Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson. Great. Good stuff.
Yeah.
What's the most terrifying animal in Australia?
Well, surely it's the redback spider, but I reckon if you went up north, the crocodiles would give them a run for their money.
Dig that.
By the way, everyone who comes down to Australia thinks that they're instantly going to run into something scary. I live in Melbourne, which is down south. It's almost impossible to find something scary down here.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, you're in Australia. You never know, man. I'm just playing. If you're on death row, what would be your final meal?
My wife makes some extraordinarily good carnitas tacos, so I'm going to go with those.
Oh, showing the wife some love. I dig that. What's your favorite daddy-daughter activity?
Daddy-daughter activity. It wouldn't be that. I'm not sure whether most people would consider it an activity, but every day that I bring my daughter home, my wife's there and she opens the door, and I've taught my daughter how to say something new. And so yesterday, I was telling my daughter, she's only 2, but I was talking her through the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie called Bloodsport. And so when she and so there's a section of that movie where the guy opens the door and he goes, "Okay, USA." And so when my 2-year-old daughter opened the door yesterday, my wife opened it, and I said, "Isabella, what do you want to say to mummy?" And Isabella said, "Okay, USA, mummy."
Oh, that's cute. It's cute. You're teaching her blood sport quotes. Again, you got it. You're on the right track, brother. You're on the right track.
Yeah, good dad. Good dad.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Oh, Sayulita, Mexico.
Okay. That's very specific, I must say. Why Sayulita? Why so specific?
It's been my favorite place for a long time. I got married there. My wife's Mexican American. Sayulita's just got a special place in the heart.
Dig it. And final question here for you, Blake. If you could sit next to anyone on an airplane, who do you want to sit next to?
Wow, that's a wonderful question. I would say that I would like to sit next to Bruce Lee.
Oof. I like that. Bruce
I think
Lee.
you could teach us all a thing or two about how to live life to the fullest.
Yeah, no doubt. And actually, I lied. You actually have one more question. I always end it with this question. I can't not forget it. If you had 10 seconds with yourself 10 years ago, what would you say?
Everything will be okay. That's probably a lot less than 10 seconds, but it's more just a factor of reassuring oneself that the future is challenging, but full of opportunity.
Honestly, that's probably one of my favorite answers. Words of wisdom. Every entrepreneur goes through doubts, but everything's going to be okay. I like that. Blake, thank you so much, brother.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Boom. I think that is a great way to end this episode today. Now it's up to you. You've listened, you've learned. Now it's up to you to take the action and go build the business, build the systems, build the automations, build the team. And, above all, build yourself. You have so much potential in you. You just got to start taking the action. I know you can do it. I've got your back. And just like Blake said, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be all right. If you're having a bad day, that's okay. I've got your back. Go out, execute, make it happen, take action. Catch you here next time on the After Hours Entrepreneur. Peace.